A booklet to accompany this series is available by sending a cheque for £3.95, made payable to BBC Education, to What the Dickens, PO Box 7, London W3 6XJ, and you'll find more details on CFAX, page 625.
You've read the book.
Committed a crime, namely burglary. Sorry.
You've seen the film.
And I hope we've managed to get something of the real Dickensian England across in this film.
Now meet KYTV's The Making of David Chiselnut.
Action! Action means that they're starting to shoot. Cut! And cut means that's the end of the show.
KYTV on your screen next Monday at 9:30 on BBC Two.
I think everyone wonders what they would do if they saw a ghost.
BBC Two has some haunting programs this Christmas.
It's me you want! Me! Mandy!
Dennis Potter's Midnight Movie is a ghostly love story.
Who's this mysterious blue boy? Christine says he ruins all the film.
He was looking for his mother when he died, and now he's found you.
Siren Spirits are strange tales of magic and mystery. And there are some classic ghost films.
Good heavens, are you a ghost?
Get into the Christmas spirits with BBC Two.
We're just a couple of minutes away from Newsnight on BBC Two after a creepy crawly experience in tonight's Video Nation.
Oh, little spider.
Where?
Here. Up you go. Cute.
Where? Yeah, sure.
Just put it up on the windowsill. Leave it alone.
Ah! That ain't tiny, that's huge!
Oh, it's a tiny spider.
Oh, Mum, there's something wrong with it!
It didn't look very well.
Look!
What,
I've
Lauren?
broken a leg!
I'm not a spider doctor.
Mum, help it! Look, the puffin's broken his leg!
No, it hasn't.
Yes, he keeps going round in circles and dragging his leg.
Well, Lauren, it's got another 7.
I can't believe it. It's so cruel.
What do you expect me to do? Put it in a splint?
No, you put it into a plaster though.
Put the spider's leg in plaster?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Meet the woman with a magnetic personality. One example of weirdness in a very strange year. But what happens when weird is normal?
I suppose some people would call me a freak. I'm well outside the normal range of human size.
Corporate rumor! Or urban myths, are they fact or fiction? Has anybody really done this?
My sister knows this friend.
Right.
And he knows this couple.
You don't say. It's X-rated. It's extra scary. It's the X-Files. Weird Night. Find it before it finds you.
Focusing on the day's news on BBC Two now, Peter Snow with Newsnight.
Yeltsin's tanks ring the Chechen capital. Will he risk all-out war if negotiations fail? Good evening. Was Boris Yeltsin right to launch the biggest Soviet military assault since the invasion of Afghanistan? Talks between Russia and the rebel Chechen Republic have been adjourned tonight, with both sides making hopeful noises. But it remains very hard to see much scope for compromise in a dispute in which President Yeltsin cannot afford to be seen to be the loser. Sergei Stankevich from the Russian Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee says Yeltsin had no alternative but to invade. But Galina Starovoitova, a former advisor to President Yeltsin and the leader of the Democratic Russia Party, warns him he's making a big mistake.
And from Nigeria, the country with Africa's largest population, I'll be reporting on the military regime that promises a return to civilian rule while still locking up the man widely accepted as winning last year's election. Democracy campaigners say the soldiers have no intention of handing over and warn of a slide to chaos.
And what's wrong with a bit of paganism? Leeds University students have appointed a white witch as their new chaplain. A prominent druid says paganism's on the increase, particularly amongst the young, which worries a leading member of the General Synod. For her, a belief in God is what separates us from the animals. There's a hot debate going on in Moscow tonight about Boris Yeltsin's wisdom in sending his troops into Chechnya. It is strictly part of the Russian Federation, not one of the countries of the so-called near abroad, those former members of the Soviet Union that are now independent. But Chechnya in the Caucasus declared itself independent 3 years ago, and its people look as if they're ready to die for it. There has been some fighting today around the capital of Grozny, while peace talks went on in the neighbouring Republic of North Ossetia. The talks have now adjourned till tomorrow without agreement, with the Chechens apparently demanding Russian withdrawal and the Russians telling the Chechens to lay down their arms. After powering their way into the rebel republic from 3 separate directions yesterday, Russia's tanks and guns have stopped short of the capital Grozny while the talks go on. There's no truce though. The Chechens launched rockets at Russian units. The Russians replied with airstrikes and attacked an oil refinery near Grozny. Do they now intend to take the city itself by storm if the talks collapse? President Yeltsin's spokesman says no, there'll be no assault on the city. Yeltsin's foreign minister points out that this is not Russia invading a foreign country.
It is not interference also in civil war like it was in Afghanistan. It is just restoration of law and order within Russian borders, like in any other place.
But taming the Chechens is not like taming any other people. This is a small Muslim state of 1 million fiercely independent mountain people. Their warrior culture and chronic lawlessness has earned them the reputation of behaving like a Russia-wide mafia. The Chechens' hatred of the Russian Empire, which has long engulfed them, rose to new heights in 1944, when Stalin shipped them all off to the work camps of Central Asia, accusing them of collaborating with Hitler.
They have started coming back home since the 50s, therefore they feel a natural antipathy towards the Russians. What I do think is a shame that these fiercely independent people should have had their identity, their cultural identity, denied to them for so many years by the Russians.
Chechnya's rebel-in-chief is Zhokhar Dudayev, once a Soviet air marshal. He's not just facing the full might of a superpower. There's indigenous opposition too, from Ruslan Kazbulatov, once the Speaker of the Russian Parliament, now making common cause with his old enemy Yeltsin in trying to undermine Dudayev. But so far, his counter-revolution has been a flop.
Now that they've showed their hand by sending in the tanks and really a tremendous force, it's going to be very, very difficult for Moscow, for Yeltsin to back out without losing face. But at the same time, he could actually start the war of the Caucasus, which would be terrible because it would go on. It would be a guerrilla war. It would go on and on and on. In the end, Russia will lose, like it did in Afghanistan.
So why is Yeltsin ready to take that kind of risk to secure his empire? That Chechnya matters is not in doubt. It's slap in the middle of Russia's big oil fields and pipeline networks. Is it also that Yeltsin fears that this tenacious bid for independence by this tiny republic in the Caucasus could prompt the other 15 autonomous Russian republics to follow suit?
I don't think that today there was any danger of Russian disintegration. There are no regions, there are no autonomous republics that would claim independence from Russia. So I think that this is an argument that could have been valid 2 years ago, when a certain danger of a loosening of the Russian Federation really existed. But today, when this situation has been overcome just by development, I think it's a very bad argument, and it's definitely not valid.
But Yeltsin's tactics will be judged in the end by the amount of popular support he wins as the television pictures tell the story from Chechnya. It's too early yet to say how it's going down in people's homes, but in parallel demonstrations in Moscow's Pushkin Square today, both the radicals and the old-style communists reacted with hostility. From both sides came the cry that the man who claimed to be the champion of democracy was acting like a murderer. Not that there's much sympathy in Moscow for Dudayev.
People would not mind if Dudayev is brought down in Chechnya, because he is definitely not a very sympathetic person, and everybody is absolutely sure that he is heading a kind of a corrupt and criminal regime that has a lot of ties with mafia, with illegal drugs dealers, armament dealers, weapons smuggling, and all those kind of things. But the Russians do not want to pay any serious price for this fight against Dudayev.
And there's another question the world is asking. Only last week in Budapest, Yeltsin was taking a tough line with the West, apparently to placate hardliners back home. Is he now under pressure from the same hardliners over Chechnya?
We definitely witness a serious change in Boris Yeltsin. Now, first of all, I don't think that today one has to wait for Alexander Rudskoy or Vladimir Zhirinovsky to come to power to Kremlin in order to witness a serious change in Russian domestic and foreign policy. I think that a serious shift can be operated with Yeltsin in the Kremlin.
Well, now I'm joined from Moscow by Sergei Stankiewicz, who's Foreign Affairs, on the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Russian Parliament, and from America by Galina Stalovoitova, the leader of the Democratic Russia Party and a close former ally of President Yeltsin's. Do you think, Ms. Stalovoitova, do you think this was wise of President Yeltsin to put the tanks in?
No, I don't think so. I agree that it's some sort of repetition of Afghan's war. Chechens are mounting very proud people. They were punished in Stalin's time. They were deported from their lands. They are indigenous population. They have a very high spirit of solidarity. And we have already a lot of casualties there, and we shall have more from both sides. I think the negotiations was the better way, but unfortunately it's lost, and that's a real threat to democracy in Russia and to the continuation of the whole course of the reforms. It is not the local conflict. I think the West should have some legal concern about this issue. It's a time to speak about human rights and its violations.
Weren't we led to believe, as Mr. Stalovoitova says, Sergei Stankiewicz, weren't we led to believe that Boris Yeltsin's Russia would not suppress democratic feelings on the part of local populations like this?
I think that it's not the question about democracy at all. It's a law and order issue. And unfortunately, this move, which is absolutely right on behalf of Boris Yeltsin, came too late. It was necessary to do such thing even earlier, maybe a year or a couple of years before. Let us imagine a real situation. This person, I mean General Dudayev, and his gang of bandits created real criminal state, unfortunately, which is a permanent source of criminal destabilization for the whole Russia. They organized huge smuggling. They rob almost all trains which come across their republic, their territory. They organized drug traffic and illegal arms deals. They provided escape for many Chechen gangsters throughout the country, which can find their safe place in Chechen Republic. Any country in the world cannot permit such things on its territory. So Yeltsin is absolutely right. But it's necessary to differentiate Dudayev and his group from Chechen people.
Right, Mr. Stalovoitova, a gang of bandits with whom negotiations effectively impossible, and you have to exert control.
I cannot quite agree with my old friend Sergei Stankevich. I think Dudayev is popularly elected president. His power is legal power. He was elected the same year when the President Yeltsin was elected. He has the opposition within his republic, as well as President Yeltsin, as well as President Bush and President Clinton, and everybody has the opposition. But the time for the negotiations was lost, dramatically lost, and I think now we shall witness the secessionistic tendencies among other Muslim republics within former Soviet Union,
yes, but
within Russian Federation.
Mr. Avoidova, what about the effect of all this on Moscow, on the rest of the Russian Federation? I mean, is it going to be popular? Are people going to want to be involved in a sort of Afghanistan, as you yourself mentioned?
No, of course it is not popular, and we had today two different demonstrations, one from right wing of opposition, another one from left wing of the opposition. There were both communists and liberals like Yegor Gaidar and his supporters.
What about that, Mr. Stankevich? What about that? There's expression of opinion in the streets of Moscow today.
Mr. Stankevich is from the centristic bloc.
Mr. Stankevich, what about that? I mean, what about the expression of outrage by these people in the streets of Moscow today? And what about the effect on popular opinion, do you think?
Even radical liberals represented by Mr. Gaidar's movement splitted about this Chechen issue. A well-known person, Foreign Minister Andrei Kozyrev, quitted from Gaidar's party because of their opposition to President's move. I think, of course, we should raise certain questions, and it is very great risk to start this real military operation on Chechen territory. But it's necessary to support President of our own country in time of such serious crisis. And I think that it's a mistake made by Mr. Gaidar and some other prominent liberals in our country. It's not necessary to be in so serious opposition in so serious time. It's necessary to support President, I'm sure.
Mr. Avoidova, do you think President Yeltsin has an eye on the elections coming up?
I don't think he has a good chances to be re-elected after this, our national disgrace connected with this Chechen's case.
Well, is it going to be a disgrace? Could it not be that it's a success, this operation? Could it not be that it does lead to the successful incorporation of Chechnya in the Russian Federation?
To be successful, to defeat Chechen's republic is only one way: to destroy it totally, to kill hundreds or thousands of people. And it's a real serious bloodshed, and of course Russian minority, more than 100,000 of them, is in a position of hostage there in this republic now.
Can this be achieved without bloodshed? Is it possible?
I think it's possible. I think it's a real test for Boris Yeltsin. He should combine both military pressure and at the same time negotiations. It's necessary to isolate Dudayev himself and his group, like it was in Panama when the United States isolated Noriega, the dictator of Panama. So it's necessary to isolate Dudayev and at the same time to avoid big causalities and avoid involvement in long-term conflict. After Dudayev is isolated, it's necessary to withdraw major forces, to call for Chechen people to create a kind of congress and to organize elections under the supervision of their ethnic relatives from neighboring republics, and maybe with the presence of international organizations such as CSCE.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stankevich, and thank you, Kirilla Saravoitova, for joining us.
Thank you.
The military government in Nigeria today extended its ban on 3 major independent newspaper groups, a strong signal that the political crisis there shows no sign of easing. Chief Abiola, the man widely accepted as having won last year's annulled election, is still in jail. The military ruler, General Abacha, has promised a return to democracy. But it was Abacha who jailed Chief Abiola for treason in June this year, when he tried to declare himself the rightful president. Chief Abiola's detention has led to strikes and protests in Lagos and the oil-producing southeast. But from the new federal capital, Abuja, the military hit back with decrees sacking union leaders and jailing democracy campaigners. Amnesty International calls it a human rights crisis. Nigerian authorities have allowed little television coverage since General Abacha took over. And Newsnight's Robin Denslow is the first British correspondent to film there since the clampdown. He reports on the continuing struggle for democracy in the first of two special reports.
This ought to be one of the great cities of Africa. Lagos is the commercial heart of Nigeria, the country that can boast the largest population on the continent, probably over 100 million, and enormous wealth from oil alone. But Lagos, like Nigeria itself, is under a military clampdown. It's impossible to drive across the city at night without an encounter with the police. They claim they haven't been paid and set up roadblocks as soon as it's dark, demanding money from motorists as well as checking their identities. The democracy protests have been crushed for now, but the crisis is not over.
The country is like a simmering volcano, ready to burst. Nigerians are waiting for the last straw before there is a political explosion.
The anger and the crisis all stem from the events of June the 12th last year, when General Babangida annulled Nigeria's long-awaited elections, though it was widely accepted that voting was remarkably free and fair, and that multimillionaire businessman Moshood Abiola had won. An interim civilian administration was in turn overthrown by yet another military regime, headed by General Abacha. Hopes that he'd respect the June '93 election were short-lived. Abacha abolished political parties and locked up Abiola for treason, when he eventually declared himself rightful president a year after the election. He's still in jail, despite court rulings for his release. Only at night, talking and paying our way through the roadblocks and hiding the camera, could we escape the government minders who were supposed to accompany us, to reach the house of the man whom almost everyone we met argued should be president, not in jail.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome.
In the sitting room of Abiola's palatial home in Moshood Abiola Crescent, a band were playing a civil rights protest song. After 34 years of independence, 24 of them under military rule, some Nigerians told us they identify with the plight of black South Africans back in the days when they couldn't vote. On the wall, a picture of the chief in happier days. He's known to be ill and in pain in jail. A prolapsed disc is pressing on a nerve root and he needs specialist treatment. So at his home, there are prayers for his safety.
Assist this country to attain democracy, justice, and fairness.
Tonight, Kudirat Abiola, the chief's senior wife, has special guests. A delegation of US congressmen from the Africa Subcommittee on a fact-finding tour. Congress registered its support for Abiola last year, and the Americans had already pleaded in vain for his release. They were fed and then lectured.
As we are sitting down eating food, policemen have corridoned off this place. They are still there as we are sitting now. This is the government that has promised us democracy.
Speakers argued there could be no democracy across Africa if it didn't exist in Nigeria, the biggest black state in the world. They asked for sanctions against their country and reminded their guests that the US invaded undemocratic Haiti.
Tell President Clinton not to abandon the Nigerian people in their quest to enthrone democracy. What happened in Haiti, we want it here. Don't wait.
The congressmen were sympathetic but non-committal. All Democrats, they've seen their powers reduced since the midterm election. So Abiola's wife waits to see if her husband will face trial. The SSS, the State Security Service, have not allowed her to visit him for 2 months.
I believe that the government are afraid of him because they stole this mandate.
Do you think he still has support all this time after the election?
Nigerians, when they gave him this mandate, supported him with 58.4% of the votes. But now, I can assure you that he has more than 90% support of the Nigerians.
The attack on Abiola went further. The Concord newspaper group, part of his business empire, was closed by military decree. So were other newspapers that annoyed General Abacha, including the Guardian group, which, strangely enough, is owned by a government minister.
By joining hands with the government, we can move swiftly and purposefully towards our destiny. We have begun by restoring calm. Our people can...
General Abacha's television address on the anniversary of his coup was not well received by this group of journalists he's put out of work.
We want himself to come and tell us why he annulled the election. And then why he decided to slap the Southerners. It's a big slap on our face, you know. I felt bad since that day. I lost my identity as a Nigerian.
Hello, Chief Abiola.
Yes?
Could you tell me what is happening at your house? Are you being arrested?
I'm being arrested. I'm just going out now with the police.
And there's clearly a large crowd in your house.
Large crowd,
Abiola's arrest sparked upheaval throughout southern Nigeria. For 2 months there were protest marches and strikes. But General Abacha refused concessions. Instead he clamped down hard, sacking union leaders by military decree, breaking up protest meetings by force and jailing democracy campaigners. In Lagos, a centre for much of the protest, the crisis also had a tribal overtone. The city is a jumble of modern road systems, flyovers and African markets, and it's a centre for the Yorubas, one of the country's main ethnic groups. They complain that they've been dominated for too long by the military and the Hausa tribe of the north. The election of Chief Abiola, a Yoruba who also enjoys northern support because he's a Muslim, should have put that right. Instead, he's been detained, as have other Yoruba campaigners. Beko Ransom Kuti, who gave up his medical practice to lead the campaign for democracy, has been locked up so many times that he's permanently prepared for jail. His daughters always have his prison bag packed. He's currently on bail for a whole series of charges. He's even accused of receiving money from Abiola to bomb government installations.
Without Abiola becoming president, we won't move forward, because you see, it's also now an ethnic thing. It's the fact that you have northerners who have said they will never give up, that power can never go, they must always be in power for one reason or the other. And now that they've lost this election
to a Yoruba,
man, you know, now people now see that are we slaves? Why must they always rule? And if we cannot rule, what's the whole basis of living together?
The Yorubas who live in the decaying tenements outside Lagos complain that the country's oil wealth isn't spent here. There's no running water and the lights don't work. But crowded, crazy Lagos is not where power lies. The government has removed itself to the calm of the new spectacular but largely deserted capital of Abuja, an hour's plane ride north and a world away. Viewed from here, there is no crisis, and despite the continuing clampdown, the government insists it supports democracy.
We are very seriously interested in democracy. This administration is aware that democracy is the mood of the world. Democracy, both within and outside, is what, in fact, the people want. But to be able to have it, you have to have sanity in the system. You have to make sure that the very structure of the Nigerian nation is still stable.
But in the meantime, Chief Abiola is still in jail, despite a court order that he should be bailed. Why is he still there? How does it help the country having Abiola, the man seen widely as winning last year's election, to be in jail? It doesn't look good for Nigeria, does it?
I agree entirely, but as I've said, it wasn't a deliberate plan.
So why is he still there?
It was a fact that events, and if you were here, you know, a few months earlier, the tension in the country was such that if Nigeria was not to degenerate, the kind of thing we see in other African countries, very tragically, if we're not to have ethnic kind of a confrontation that may even lead to a civil war, the kind of decision that government took, very sadly, they had to, in order to save the majority of Nigerians from a very serious internal strife.
Chief Abiola may be the most celebrated of Nigeria's political prisoners, but there are many other democracy campaigners in jail who've not even been charged. After dealing with the oil strikes and the protests, the military regime seemed determined to clamp down on any opposition, even as they talk of a return to civilian rule. And with the law carried out through military decree, some lawyers complain that the courts are becoming redundant. We managed to visit the lawyer who's been most outspoken in attacking the government. An American television team who tried to do so earlier this year were deported. During the night of August the 26th, there was an armed attack on his chambers. 2 of his guards were wounded.
You are fully aware of the position of the case of your detained brother.
Gani Fawahenmi is convinced the military were responsible. Arrested many times himself, his clients include the Nobel Prize-winning writer Wole Soyinka, who's now escaped from Nigeria.
Nigeria is worse than the police state. We are virtually in an undeclared martial law.
Fawahenmi claims the courts now have no power to query the authority of the soldiers. In the past 6 months, General Abacha's government have issued decrees closing newspapers, sacking union leaders, and extending the period of detention without trial from 6 weeks to 3 months.
There's only one man whose word is the law of the nation, whose word is the order of the court, whose word is legislation, whose word is police, whose word is army, whose word is the dehumanization of the Nigerian people.
Several of Fawahenmi's clients are members of the National Democracy Coalition and are now in custody. They include the veteran politician, 71-year-old Chief Anthony Naharo, the movement's vice chairman, and one of Abiola's aides, Prince Ademola Adenji Adele. He was arrested in Lagos and moved to the north of the country without his family being informed.
Imagine you going on the streets, no member of your family is there, somebody stops you on the way, picks you for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, nobody knows anything about you. You can imagine the trauma on your wife, on your kids, on the job, and you can imagine we will go about searching for him, looking everywhere, probably in the morgues, in the mortuary, and you wouldn't know where to look for. It's horrible.
Just disappeared?
Yeah.
Then there's the author Ken Saro-Wiwa, an activist in oil-producing Ogoniland, where he's campaigned against pollution and for local people to share the oil wealth. After the death of suspected collaborators, he's to be tried for murder by a special tribunal. His brother is on the run.
Ken is only alive now because he's a little bit known. Nobody knows me. If I'm seen, if they get me, they're going to kill me. I'm not making any mistakes about that. They're going to shoot me.
We were told that after the upheavals here in the oil fields of the southeast, the security forces killed at least 50 people. We were prevented from travelling in Ogoniland, but one activist we met here said the repression continues.
The government has sent in soldiers to Ogoniland, all over Ogoniland, to be pursuing people at nights, daytime, shooting indiscriminately and killing people. There's no peace in Ogoniland. People in Ogoniland sleep in bush at nights.
Not in their houses?
Not in their houses.
Frustrated with what he sees as the military trampling on the law, Gani Fawahenmi decided on more direct confrontation. On October the 1st, despite the ban, the human rights lawyer launched his own political party. As he drove into Lagos the same day, he was inevitably arrested.
Clearly, we are for confrontation. Clearly, we are in pursuit of democracy, and we are prepared to put our lives on the line.
But this is still a banned party. Can you take on the military regime?
It is a banned party. We will try. We may die. We hope others will follow.
Last month, Amnesty International issued a report on Nigeria. It claimed the detention of people on account of their non-violent political views and activities, together with extrajudicial executions, have precipitated one of the most serious human rights crises which Nigeria has experienced.
By the time we had this crisis in August, September, October, it was so serious that honestly, unless we took the decision of deciding what to do to save Nigeria, the alternative would have been to have a very violent civil strike, which would have been, worse than actually ensuring that a few people that are in the nerve center of this problem are actually detained in the interest of public peace and order.
And not charged?
Of course, they will be charged if there are, if as I've said, the investigations so reveal that they ought to be charged.
Some have been in jail some time, haven't they?
It's unfortunate that sometimes some of these investigations take longer than necessary. I wish it can be faster.
Despite the clampdown across the country and the continued detention of Chief Abiola, the military government insist there will be a return to democracy. As evidence, they point to the Constitutional Conference, which wound up in Abuja at the end of last week. 2/3 of the delegates were elected after a low poll, boycotted by many Abiola supporters. A third were appointed by the military regime. Their task is to present the military with a new constitution, the fourth since independence, and a timetable for a return to civilian rule. When they present their findings to General Abacha next month, it's expected they'll suggest he should only stay on for 1 more year. But the final decision lies with the general himself, as the visiting US congressman learned from the chairman.
The question that some of us don't understand is that if there is a recommendation coming out of the conference, the government in essence can reject that recommendation?
Of course, theoretically, yes, in theory.
And even delegates were divided as to the extent of their power.
We have been assured that the military will not likely set aside what our decisions, and I accept that.
Unless the people of Nigeria learn how to oppose the military, the same thing will happen again. The people of Nigeria should be able to understand that our rights and privileges are trampled on by the military.
But in Abuja, the official government line is clear. It's unfortunate that so many people are locked up, but this is necessary for calm to be restored. And please wait, there will be democracy.
There is a tremendous political consciousness in the Nigerian populace that no one, not even the military, will take for granted ever again. The military themselves, and I'm saying this very, very frankly, are resolved that the most honorable way forward is to support democracy and let them return to their professional duty in military profession.
But in Lagos, the military aren't trusted or believed. The Yorubas feel excluded from power, and there's even talk of secession, as attempted by Nigeria's eastern region, which broke away as Biafra in the 60s and brought the country to civil war.
Well, just let's say anything can happen. Let's say anything can happen. And if it does happen this time, I think many people will be in favor of it. Last time Biafra was isolated, but this time I think people are getting the impression that if we can't stay together in peace, we might as well call the whole thing off. And that's the